President commenting on the shooting in South Carolina. Take a look.
Now is the time for mourning and for healing. But let's be clear. At some point, we as a country will have to reckon with the fact that this type of mass violence does not happen in other advanced countries. It is in our power to do something about it. I say that recognizing the politics in this town foreclose a lot of those avenues right now.
Sadly, these kind of things do happen in other countries. We don't have full title to most violent place on earth here. Just going through some of the more obvious ones, very recently in the eastern Ukraine, we had an attack that killed 13 people, a shooter in New Brunswick, Canada, who killed 3 Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I could go on to talk about those in the Philippines, in what is the old Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, dozens killed in all combination and all variety of attacks, courtesy violent gun, and of course one of the more famous in Norway that took out close to 70 children. So it's not just our country, it is the world. And to Louisiana Republican Governor Bobby Jindal on if now is the time to necessarily be targeting guns or make this a unique American drama. Governor, very good to see you. I take the president at face value that he's stricken, as are we all are, when we hear incidents like these. But then to bring guns into it and talk about how this is a unique American problem, it seems to be a world problem.
Well, Neil, I think you're being very polite. I think it was completely shameful. Within 24 hours of this awful tragedy, 9 people killed at a Bible study in a church. Now, let's stop and think about that. 9 people coming into the church's sanctuary to praise God, to study God's scripture, gunned down. This monster then says he's going to leave some victims alive so they can go tell the world what he has done. Within 24 hours, we've got the president trying to score cheap political points. Let him have this debate next week. His job as commander-in-chief is to help the country begin the healing process. Now's the time to be hugging these families. Now's the time to be praying for these families. Now's the time to be coming together. Thank God for law enforcement for capturing this monster, and there's no other word for him, this monster so quickly. He's got a job as president to help begin the healing process, to unify us. For whatever reason, he always tries to divide us. Today was not the moment.
But you know, one of the things that comes up, and I know you're entertaining a possible run for president yourself, and if you were to become president, sadly, I'm betting you would have to deal with issues like these, and maybe more than you would like. And that was the gist of the president's remarks, that he deals with this a lot, and he thinks it's because of the easy access to guns. If you were to become president, do you think you should rein in that easy access to guns?
Well, Neil, look, the president and I disagree on the Second Amendment, but that's no surprise. We disagree on the First Amendment as well. I believe in religious liberty. He doesn't. We disagree on the 10th Amendment. I agree. I argue that the federal government should be doing a lot of things it should be doing. But so he and I would disagree on Second Amendment. I'm not for stopping law-abiding citizens from being able to exercise their Second Amendment rights. But now's not the time. My point is, whether he and I agree or not, now's the time. Look, there are children wondering, why do things like this happen? There are families at home trying to understand, how does this happen in a church?
Do you think easy access to guns has anything to do with it? Or easier?
I think for today, what the commander-in-chief should have done, he could have emulated what Nikki Haley did. What a great example, what a great governor of her state, coming forward and speaking for the people of South Carolina, saying our hearts are broken. And literally, I mean, having that candid moment on TV, you could see the emotion. You could see that's beginning the healing process. The president could have asked the country. He could have said, instead of talking about politics today, we're not Democrats, Republicans, independents, blacks, whites. We're Americans. And we all need to worship together. We need what would have been a great sign is to call for people to fill those churches. We don't let anybody be scared from going to church. Don't let anybody be deterred from lifting our prayers up to God.
No, I hear what you're saying. But since the president started this debate today, if you don't mind my continuing to indulge it, even in countries and cities that have very strict gun control laws, Norway is a country, one of the strictest on earth. And again, that mass killing that killed almost 70 kids. Paris, one of the strictest gun control laws on the planet. And we still had those attacks that took out half a dozen in that city. So I guess what I'm asking you is this an issue, today, the timing notwithstanding, that should be addressed? Or is this going beyond access to guns that we have just more incidents of violence globally, period.
Sure. Well, look, I'd say a couple of things real quick. In Louisiana, we've done things to make sure that the mental health records are part of the background check, part of the federal system. That was existing law. It should be done. I know other states have taken those steps. Let's be honest, there's evil in the world. What you're seeing today, what we saw last night, that was evil. There are and that's...
So we were looking for ISIS evil. And this kid doesn't appear to have anything to do with ISIS.
And law enforcement will figure out what his so-called motivations were. We shouldn't try to pretend we're going to understand his mind. Yeah. I'd love to tell you there's some predictable line between A and B. Look, the problem is this president thinks the government can answer every problem. There is evil in this world. Ironically, I was in South Carolina just a few days before this calling for a spiritual revival. And the reality is we know there's good and evil. As a father, I've got to teach my kids that bad things sometimes do happen to good people.
But now you've got to teach them, too, that it's not only when you go to a theater and there are fears of that, the trial of that shooter going on as we speak, but now when you go to churches. I mean, kids, all folks are going to be concern. Now, regardless of whether this is access to guns or not, as a governor, as a potential president, what do you do?
Well,
what message do you say?
I'd say, one, we can't live our lives in fear. And that's why I think it'd be great if the president would say, you know what, we're going to fill the AME churches, we're going to fill the other churches, and we're going to pray for this. Whether you're...
There are a lot of people say you should lock churches.
Whether in that
Would you lock churches?
Absolutely not. Whether you're... The churches have to be open. The churches have to be open to the public. And I always...
What about metal detectors?
Look, I leave that up to the pastors. They can decide what's best in their situations, for their sanctuaries, for their... I want the church to be a place where anybody can go. I want the church to be where we don't care your background, we don't care your color, we don't care your income, we don't care anything about you except that you're created in God's image. We are called... The Bible teaches us to love you, to welcome you, and that's what we should be doing. I think what the president can be doing is, this is a teaching moment, but not about politics or guns or dividing America. It's saying to our children, look, bad things do happen to good people, but we believe in an all-powerful, loving, forgiving God. Some things will only make sense in his kingdom. There is evil in the world. I'm a Christian. My faith teaches me that there is evil and sin in the world, and no powerful government is going to eradicate that. We can certainly, I'm not saying government needs to give up. There are good things that this president has a government doing too many things. There are things the government can do. Government's not going to eradicate evil. And that's why it would be also a good time to call America to prayer. This president doesn't seem to like to do that. That is an important part of our country's tradition.
All right. He's got 18 months left, right, or thereabouts. And now the focus seems to be on what will be the tone of the next president, or whoever takes over now. Many argue the Democrats are driven far left on a lot of populist issues, torpedoing the president's wishes on trade. Republicans today cobbled together something that they hope will lead to a trade pact before the July 4th recess. But having said that, Republicans seem to be tripping over themselves who can offer the lowest taxes. Rand Paul comes to mind, governor, with a 14.5% flat tax. I guess it's flatter than other flat taxes. But he freely acknowledges in this proposal that it will mean over 10 years, $2 trillion less in revenue over the next decade. What do you think of that?
A few things. And I haven't looked at his proposal. I don't know the specifics. I do think we need to shrink the size of government, not slow its growth rate. We need a lower, flatter tax code. That means Republicans have to give up their carve-outs just like the Democrats. Both sides would say no special treatment.
Well, what are your proposals? He has 14.5% flat tax. One side's kind of fits all. Others say that's regressive. Do you?
Well, look, if I were to become a candidate, we'd offer a detailed tax reform policy. But it needs to be lower and flatter. It needs to encourage growth. We've gotten used to this 2%. The first quarter was negative. We've gotten used to this 2% anemic growth. We've got the highest tax rate in the developed world for our corporations. Absolutely. But we also have to cut spending. We also have to cut spending.
I understand that, but how low would you cut taxes?
You and I had this discussion before, and I told you that historically government spends about 18%. Federal government historically has spent around, it's taken in about 18% of our economy. We've spent now, we're averaging 22%. It's usually been lower than that, in the 20%. We've got to get back at least to those historic norms. We've got to cut the size of government.
Which would mean what? Which would mean a top rate of what? How would you adjust the rates?
Well, again, look, we'll sit down and figure out a comprehensive tax plan, but it needs to be lower and flatter without the carve-outs.
So that's going to be part of your announcement next week?
Well, we'll make a decision whether to run next week. I'm saying if we run, we've already offered detailed plans on energy, on health care.
There's no doubt that you're going to run,
defense,
though, right?
On education. If we become a candidate, we'll have detailed plans on
and you'll
tax
let me
as
know.
Well. Absolutely.
You'll let me know.
But it needs to be pro-growth. And that's what the Democrats,
Gotcha.
It's not about redistribution, it's about growth.
All right, Governor, thank you very, very much.